I was struck as I came in this morning trying to find parking in downtown Frankfurt in the morning because of a prayer breakfast. What a wonderful problem to have. So thank you all for being here as part of this. I was struck by what I would share with you this morning, and I was reminded of something that I read recently in the book of Exodus. And so often we remember certain things, and many of us are familiar with a story that took place as the Israelites were leaving Egypt, where they had been held captive for generations. And as they were leaving, they came to the Red Sea, and they were being pursued by the Egyptians. And they suddenly found themselves, as they were being gained on, in a position where they didn't know what would happen to them. They pretty much assumed that they would be overrun. It was expected that they would be overrun by both them and, I would imagine, the Egyptians that were pursuing them. And they began to cry out to God, some crying out in desire for relief, some crying out in anger, some wishing they had never left. And there was great consternation among the people that were finding themselves piling up along the shore of the Red Sea. And it was at that time, there were 3 verses, and it's easy to remember. If you ever want to find these again, it's 14, 15, 16. So they are sequential. It's chapter 14 of Exodus, verses 15 and 16. And I was struck by something, because I've heard this story. I don't think there's a person in here who probably is not familiar with it. But I had never actually been struck by what I'm about to share with you, and that is that this is in verses 15 and 16. And the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. But lift up your rod, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea." And what I was struck by is the fact that, quite frankly, I'm fairly confident that God did not need Moses to divide the sea. Had God been so inclined, the sea would have opened up for them as they arrived, and across they would have gone. But God was calling Moses and the people to action, not just simply to cry out for him. And this may seem like an odd message for those who have assembled to pray, because when we pray, we're crying out to God. We're crying out for God's intervention, for divine providence, as this nation has often been blessed with since its inception. But I'm asking you, please, to think about the fact that God expects things from us as well. Not just our prayers and supplications, not just our desire to commune with him verbally, but he wants action from us. He expects us to be the hands and feet of Christ, to be his people on this earth. I was struck by something else too, because you often hear it. In fact, we may hear it even in the course of this morning from Chronicles. I believe it's 2 Chronicles 7. There's a passage, again, we're all familiar with. It begins, "If my people who are called by my name." But who is that? Is that Christians? Interestingly, when it was written, there were no Christians. Who were the people that were called by his name? They were his chosen people. The people who were called by his name are inclusive now of any number of folks, to include those that we know of now as Christians who indeed carry the name of Christ. But the people who believed in Jehovah, the people who believed in the one true and living God, those were the people that God has constantly called out to, asking them to humble themselves. And so I would ask us to remember, as we leave this place, as we go about our day today, our week this week, our month, our year, and the rest of our lives, that we stay humble, but that we be people of action, that we be people who don't simply call out to God when things are great and we want to thank him, or when things are tough and we need help, but to have the regular kind of dialogue with the type of Abba Father, with the type of Father that we would want to have communion with if he were physically here with us. To have that kind of relationship, but to take the instructions that we've been given and to be people of action, I'm grateful to be the governor of this Commonwealth. I'm grateful for the responsibility that you and others have bestowed in me. I take that seriously. I call out to God on a regular basis, more often than you probably would even imagine. I'm a guy who, for all that I know, it's 1/1,000,000th of what I need to know on a daily basis. And I would encourage you, please, that as you go about your lives and each of your respective responsibilities, call out to God. Rely on God. We were created to have a relationship with our Creator. And I'm humbled by the fact that you all are here. I'm grateful that you took it upon yourselves to be here, to focus on this. On a stormy day, with 1,000 excuses why you could have been somewhere else, you've chosen to be here. Thank you, and God bless you.